Welcome to the meeting place. We're so glad to have you with us. This morning, we are continuing a series that we kicked off last week called The Games We Play, where we are exploring different popular games each week and using them as a launching point to draw out metaphors to discover how we can live a better life. And if you missed last week's message, you can always catch up online or on the TMP app. And today, we're exploring the blockbuster game that blasted records back in 2010. And it's a simple little iPhone game called Angry Birds. And so if we haven't had a chance to meet yet, I'm the Youth and Young Adults pastor here at the Meeting Place Church. And my name is Peter Bird, but I'm not an angry bird. Only sometimes. And it really just depends on my caffeine levels, how the Canucks are playing. So this past week wasn't a great week if you were following hockey. So back in the fall of 2012, I was working my way through an automotive technician program at Vancouver Island University. And my days consisted of hands-on shop time, diagnosing and fixing vehicles in the mornings. And in my afternoons, I spent them listening to lectures on all the theory about braking systems and suspension systems and steering and electrical systems of vehicles. And as much as I found the inner workings of vehicles really fascinating, I also found my attention divided between my instructor and my newest addiction, Angry Birds. So as I was getting into it, I was thinking, who knew that a little iPhone game about launching colorful little birds at fortresses full of pigs could be so captivating? But there I was in the back of automotive class, launching away. And so if you didn't get swept up in the Angry Birds hype like I did, maybe you're asking yourself, what is Angry Birds? How do you play? What do you actually do in this game? And it's actually pretty simple. You use a slingshot to launch otherwise flightless Angry Birds into fortresses constructed by their enemy, the hungry green pigs. And now we can't help but ask, what are these little birds so angry about? What are they so angry about that they're willing to hurl their bodies into the homes of these pigs? Well, you only have to get a few minutes into the game to find that these birds are angry because the hungry green pigs have stolen their eggs and they're planning a feast. Knowing this, these little birds actually have a pretty good reason to be angry. The emotion of anger is often linked to images and thoughts of someone out of control, someone flying off the handle, their eyes bugging out, their face red, their emotions just fueled with rage as they spew fiery words, as they throw things, as they stomp their feet. And with these pictures in mind, it's not surprising that anger gets a bad rap. And not only that, but I'm sure we can all think of examples where there has been a lot of damage done in our world as a result of anger. And when we turn to the Bible, it also has plenty of examples to confirm that anger can hold negative and dangerous potential. Check out just a few of the verses. You can recognize a fool by the way they give full vent to their rage and let their words fly. A hot-tempered person stirs up conflict, but the one who is patient calms a quarrel. Be slow to become angry. Banish bitterness, rage, and anger, shouting and slander, and any and all malicious thoughts. These are poison. And there are numerous verses in the Bible that counsel us to avoid anger. And so it seems like the vibe we can get from the Bible on this topic is a rather simplistic one. Anger is bad. Full stop. Just don't be angry. But here's the question that I want to put out there for us to consider this morning. What if anger can be helpful? What if anger can actually play a role in moving us towards a better life? It's an interesting question to consider. But in order to explore it, let's take a closer look at what it is that gets us all fired up in the first place. So when I was 7 years old, I was in grade 2, and I remember one of the boys in my class brought in what was probably one of the coolest things that I'd ever seen at the time. It was a set of replica military dog tags. So cool. But he didn't just bring in a set for himself. He also brought in a set for 4 or 5 of the other boys in the class. And I quickly realized that I wasn't included. I was on the outside looking in, and a little fire started to burn inside of me. I started to turn into a little red angry bird, if you will. Later that day, as we were all outside for recess, I saw that group of boys from my class all running around together happily, dog tags swinging from their necks. And as they came running my direction, that little fire of anger that was burning inside of me began to grow. And as they ran by me, as they came my direction, that little fire started to burn so hot that I quickly selected a target from the group. I let my anger flow, and I tripped one of them to the ground. And for a second I felt better as I vented my anger on that poor kid. But my venting of anger quickly turned to embarrassment, apology, remorse, and my own trip to the principal's office. And at the time, it all went down so fast that I barely knew what happened as I let my anger take control. As many psychologists talk about, when it comes to anger, there's almost always more going on below the surface before it boils over into a full-on meltdown. And if we're honest, there's almost always more going on inside of us when we reflect on the times that we've experienced anger boiling over in our own lives. Maybe for you, it's happened in those times that someone cuts you off in traffic. Or when your favorite coffee place gets your order wrong again, and you're running late. Or maybe when your coworker starts doing all those really annoying things that they did yesterday. Or maybe when someone close to you says those words that just skillfully reach past all your defenses and push your big red meltdown button. One concept that I was introduced to recently that has helped me as I've tried to understand this topic of anger a little bit better is the idea of the anger iceberg, which is a visual way to help us understand anger. So check this out. In the same way that most of an iceberg is hidden below the surface of the water, leaving only the tip exposed, the actions we take in anger are only the tip of the iceberg. They are an expression of the emotions that are happening deep below the surface. Now, as I reflected on that iceberg, I could see that even as a 7-year-old kid, there was a lot more going on below the surface on that day I lashed out at my classmate. My anger was actually an expression of a mix of emotions. Envy, insecurity, maybe a bit of loneliness, and probably a few more. So Harvard Medical School psychologist and author Susan David wrote a book called Emotional Agility. And in it, she wrote this: "Our raw feelings can be the messengers we need to teach us things about ourselves." So something I've been thinking about, and I would invite you to consider it with me, is what if the God who created you and me already knows that our raw feelings can be messengers to teach us? And that maybe our raw feelings, even the ones that we consider negative, are actually a gift from God to us, that He designed in us from the beginning. A gift to alert us to the deeper emotions that are happening inside of us. What if anger is an alarm bell that alerts us to what is really going on deep inside us so that we can do something about it? To help us further explore this topic of anger and discover what is under the iceberg, Here's what author, speaker, and pastor Greg Boyd says about anger. Anger happens whenever something you value is not being treated as valuable. Its worth is being denied. Maybe for you, this shows up when your value of punctuality is stepped on by others who run on island time. Or when your value of freedom to leave your kitchen sink full of dishes is stepped on by others who insist you clean it up. Or maybe when your value of a quiet morning with a good book is stepped on by your neighbor who insists on playing music at all hours of the day. And I would just like to take a quick moment to apologize to my neighbors. Like really, I'm really, really sorry. So when we start to see anger in this way as a tool, maybe even a gift, one thing we can start to do is let go of the guilt and let go of the sense of failure that can so easily pile up on top of that feeling of anger when we start to feel angry. And instead of feeling guilt and failure, maybe we can start to become curious about what is underneath the iceberg of anger and allow that discovery to lead us to a better life. And so remember all those passages from the Bible about how anger can be dangerous? Maybe you're here thinking, this approach to anger, the iceberg and the values and all this, like this sounds really interesting, but doesn't the Bible caution us against anger? Like, doesn't it just say, don't be angry? So let's actually take another look at those verses we read earlier. You can recognize fools by the way they give full vent to their rage and let their words fly. A hot-tempered person stirs up conflict, but the one who is patient calms a quarrel. Be slow to become angry. Banish bitterness, rage, and anger, shouting and slander, and any and all malicious thoughts. They are poison. After a closer look, it's interesting to notice that while these verses strongly caution us to be careful with anger, the main potential problem with anger that they seem to point to, where anger can go wrong, is in what you and I choose to do with our anger when we feel its fire starting to burn inside of us. Anger can become a problem when we give full vent to our rage and let our words fly. When in our anger we stir up conflict. When we allow ourselves to become angry quickly. When we hold on to our bitterness, rage, and anger and let it poison our words and thoughts. Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. When we take a closer look at these verses, we can see that the writers of the Bible seemed to accept that the feeling of anger is a normal and expected part of the human experience, without judging that it's bad. This insight allows us to consider that maybe there's actually an opportunity for growth when we choose to deal with anger in a healthy way when it surfaces. So in the New Testament of the Bible, we find a letter written by an early church leader named Paul. And he wrote this letter to some of his friends at a church that he helped get started. And in his words, Paul encourages his friends with what they can do when they feel this fire of anger beginning to burn. And here's what he says. Put away your lies and speak the truth to one another, because we are all part of one another. When you are angry, don't let it carry you into sin. Don't let the sun set with anger in your heart, giving the devil room to work. Don't let even one rotten word seep out of your mouths. Instead, offer fresh words that build others up when they need it most. That way, your good words will communicate grace to those who hear them. It's time to stop bringing grief to God's Holy Spirit. You have been sealed with the Spirit, marked as his own for the day of rescue. Banish bitterness, rage, and anger, shouting and slander, and any and all malicious thoughts. These are poison. Instead, be kind and compassionate. Graciously forgive one another, just as God has forgiven you through the chosen one, our liberating King, Jesus. When anger surfaces, the catalyst of our anger can often be traced back to the actions of another person, usually the person who stepped on our values. And when that happens, and it will happen, Paul is saying that the antidote to the poison of anger distilling in our lives, to bitterness that builds in our lives when we hold on to anger, he says the antidote is kindness, it's compassion, and forgiveness. In other words, it's love. And not just any love, but the same kind of love that God showed each one of us when he gave up his comfort in heaven to come to us in Jesus and ultimately give his life in exchange for ours. Angry Birds is a simple game about angry little birds seeking to save their eggs from the hungry pigs by using their bodies as avian ammo. And it was exactly this simplicity that made Angry Birds such a success. During an interview, Heikel Head, he was the CEO of Rovio, which is the company that released Angry Birds. He was the CEO at the time of Angry Birds development and release. And he said that when they developed Angry Birds, they wanted to make a game that was simple to play, but hard to master. And trust me, based on the hours I've spent playing this game, they did exactly that. But something else I've discovered, and I wonder if you've maybe experienced this too, is that trying to follow Jesus, trying to learn how to trust him for a better life by putting his teachings into practice, has some similarities to playing Angry Birds. It can be simple to understand, but it can be hard to master. And this is also true when it comes to this whole topic of dealing with our anger in a healthy way. It's simple to understand, but it's hard to master. But I think the good news is that maybe mastering life isn't the point. Maybe the point is just playing the game, showing up, allowing God's love to increasingly help us to transform our hearts, and just not giving up. Instead of letting our anger run wild, be kind and compassionate. Graciously forgive one another, just as God has forgiven you through the chosen one, our liberating King, Jesus. Many days, it can feel like a tall order to be kind, to be compassionate, and to graciously forgive. But as we work to do that, we have this hope that we can hold on to. This hope that you and I have helped to forgive others because we have been forgiven ourselves by Jesus, our liberating King. He is the one who gave everything so that we don't have to drink the poison of bitterness, and so that we don't have to remain slaves to our anger, following its every order. Instead, we can keep showing up. We can keep asking for his help to follow one step at a time and ultimately to live a life fully in God's love so that we can pass that love on to others. So I'm so stoked that you are here with us this morning and that we get to do this life together and do this journey together. And if you would like to pray with me, I invite you to do that now. So God, we just thank you so much for your love for us. And we thank you that this love isn't just a feeling, but it's an action. And it's a love that is so great that it brought you, Jesus, to this world so that you could give your life for our freedom. And I ask that you would help each one of us just see how we can take another step towards you today, how we can open ourselves to you a little bit more today. And we thank you for this time. We thank you for this space together to meet with you and to meet with each other. And it's in your name we pray, Jesus. Amen.